Jake Tapper is watching what's going on. Jake, this was a very significant contrast we heard from Senator Rubio as opposed to the president.
That's right. I'm actually standing here right now with the man who gave that thankless task of a speech a year ago, Congressman Paul Ryan, Republican of Wisconsin, the chairman of the House Budget Committee, and also, of course, Mitt Romney's vice presidential running mate. First of all, you predicted before the speech that you feared the president would take a hard turn to the left. Is that what you heard this evening, or no?
In some areas, I think he was productive. I thought on comprehensive immigration reform, I thought his words were measured. I think the tone and the words he took were productive on that front. He listed a laundry list of new programs that ought to be created. He said they won't cost another dime. Problem is, we're already $1 trillion in the hole. He dramatically overstated the deficit reduction of his administration without counting any of the spending that had occurred during his administration. So I think he underplayed the enormity of our task before us on a debt crisis, on deficit reduction, which is really threatening to our economy. So I think what you got was kind of a traditional laundry list, I guess I would say, from a liberal perspective, of new programs and things like that, without really talking about what these will really cost and how it affects our economy.
But you did hear immigration reform as an area.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty productive. I think, you know, when you're in the legislative arena and we're trying to get a comprehensive bipartisan agreement here, the words he uses matters. And he used what I thought was a measured tone, which gives me a sense that he's trying to get something done. So he used measured words that were productive with respect to immigration. I think that's an area where we have a good chance of getting something done. There are clearly other areas where we have to work together. But what I'm concerned about is he underplayed the enormity of the task before us, which is to confront a debt crisis. He's suggesting that there's not much more work to be done to reduce the deficit and get this debt under control, and that's just not the case. There's a lot of work to be done.
There is a lot of work to be done. He also mentioned your former running mate, Mitt Romney, or I guess he's your former, whatever.
I know who you're talking about.
As supporting tying the minimum wage to cost of living. Is that something that you could support?
I've never been a fan of that idea. I think it's inflationary. I think it actually is counterproductive in many ways. You end up costing jobs from people who are at the bottom rung of the economic ladder. Look, I wish we could just pass a law saying everybody should make more money without any adverse consequences. The problem is, you know, costing jobs from those who are just trying to get entry-level jobs. The goal ought to be is to get people out of entry-level jobs into better jobs, better-paying jobs. That's better education. That's a growing economy. Those are some of the things he talked about, and I don't think raising the minimum wage, and history is very clear about this, doesn't actually accomplish those goals.
And one other last thing, you've talked a lot about the insurmountable task you haven't called it an insurmountable task, but the challenge of solving the deficit problem.
Right.
Would you ever be willing to vote for a package that included some tax increases, even if it was just closing loopholes, closing some of the ones that the president talks about on the stump, and corporate jets and that sort of thing?
Well, I supported the fiscal cliff agreement that already raised revenues by about $650 billion.
No, but I'm talking about a future plan.
No, but so here's the issue. We want to make sure that we have tax reform. He said two things. He wants tax reform, then he said close loopholes. Well, closing loopholes to spend more money in Washington means you're denying the ability to do tax reform, because it is from these loopholes that we do tax reform. By closing loopholes, you can lower rates and do tax reform to create jobs and grow the economy. That's what we're in favor of. Lots of Democrats agree with us. If you take those loopholes for spending, which is what I heard tonight, then you're making it virtually impossible to actually get tax reform. So what we want, smart spending cuts, not across the board like he's suggesting. We want entitlement reforms, and we want tax reform, which of course means closing loopholes so we can lower tax rates to get economic growth. That's the secret of success. That's what there are a lot of bipartisan support for, but I didn't quite hear that from the president tonight, and that's a cause for concern.
Okay, we're going to have to continue our discussion when you come on my new show, which is launching
I'd be
in
happy
March.
to do
I know
so.
You're going to be one of the first
I just
guests.
committed.
And now we're going to throw to Chris Cuomo to have more analysis of the president's State of the Union address, and of course Marco Rubio, senator from Florida, Republican response. Chris?
All right, thank you, Jake. Good plug for the show, by the way.